would be your own loud podcast slash live stream slash replay slash whatever that we're doing with all this stuff now. You know, one of the neatest things about being a podcaster is the community. I can't stress that enough. For those of you who aren't podcasting or who don't have a focus like that, you're really missing out on meeting some unbelievable people. And so our guest today, Richard Kaufman. So I was introduced to him from Eric Allen, who you all probably remember that show. And Richard has very fond memories and a great relationship with Eric. And Eric was a referral from Kelly Cardenas, who was one of the first people on this show, and that he introduced me to a whole bunch of people. And then once you start seeing is all of these people start kind of bubbling up, and then you get to meet these amazing people like our guest today. So here's the background very quickly on Richard. So I was very, very honored to be on his show. He runs one of the number one VETprenuer podcast, period. So it's focused on veterans and first responders. It is called Vertical Momentum. He does a whole bunch of wonderful nonprofit stuff, which we're going to talk about today. But first off, Richard, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. And come on, you mentioned Eric's name and then you mentioned me. You know, that's kind of like saying, okay, well, there's Derek Jeter, and then there's me with my old glove, and I'm like,
I totally disagree with you on that, man. You guys are peers in this, and your guys' interviewing ability, your passion for what you do. I think you guys are on par, and I'm truly honored to know both of you. But let's get our audience an opportunity, Richard, to get to know who you are. So tell us your story, man.
All right. I'm going to give you guys a quick down and dirty, and then we can just, I come from a military, 23 years in the military. And usually we could do a quick synopsis in 5-10 minutes. Just a quick down and dirty about me. I grew up in New Jersey. My father left when I was 3 months old. My mother was an addict, but she was a working addict. So she was also a nurse. So she worked a lot, weekends, holidays. We all know that system. And so I was left to my own devices a lot. And we moved around a lot. So I went to like 7-8 different schools before I hit high school. I had my first drink at 12, full-blown alcoholic by the age of 13. Got kicked out of high school for hitting a teacher with a desk. They frown upon that in that establishment.
Just a little bit.
So I decided, I'll join the military. It's either jail or the military. Somehow I joined the military and went to jail at the same time. So I got in a lot of trouble in the military, stayed in 2.5 years. Eventually I got into so much trouble that Uncle Sam decided he didn't want me as his nephew anymore and booted my ass out. Got into some trouble, got locked up, almost went to jail. And then we'll get into this a little bit in the story. But the guy that I actually robbed was a police officer. Duh.
Oh.
And, but he said, you know what, Rich, you're 20 years old. Back then I was good looking back then. He's like, if you go to jail, you're going to be somebody's bitch.
Ooh.
So I'm going to give you a chance. You need to get my money back in 24 hours, which I begged, borrowed, didn't steal, but I did beg and borrow. Got the money back, but he said, you got to go to 90 meetings in AA, 90 days. Oh. I hit something like 300 meetings in a row. Haven't had a drink since January 1st, 1989. So I just hit 33 years clean and sober. But the day I go about to get arrested, my uncle that bailed me out made a snide remark. He said, you know what? I knew you could never make it as a military man. You don't have what it takes. And it just ate at me. I mean, I don't know what it was. It just ate at me. Ate at me for like a year. And then I got back into the military, which is pretty much unheard of.
Yeah.
Out and then getting back in. So I joined the National Guard, got back in, still had an attitude, wasn't drinking, was just an asshole, and moved to South Carolina. Got in a lot of trouble again. They were due to chapter me out, throw me out for the second time at the end of September 2001. But because of what happened in the morning of September 11th, 2001, and I'm sure we'll get into that, it totally changed my life. It changed my whole perspective on everything. And I wasn't the same person when I went to bed that night that I was that I woke up that day. I begged my company commander to keep me. I said, please keep me. He heard all my bullshit before, but he said he's
Yeah.
seen something different in me. They
Oh.
decided to keep me. Thank God. Um, and within 3 years, I became a non-commissioned officer. I became Soldier of the Year.
Ooh.
And I, I, I really excelled. I became the ultimate soldier. And then I moved to New Jersey, joined the New Jersey National Guard. And on my first annual training going to Fort Dix, I was backing up a vehicle that broke down and it ran over me. It ran over my head, ran over my body, caused me to have an ocular stroke. That's why I'm blind in my left eye. And obviously the military, you can't see, you can't shoot. We don't need
That's
you.
yeah.
So after a year and a half, they medically discharged me on Memorial Day, 2012. That was the day that I attempted suicide,
Oh.
and thank God it didn't work out. But well, I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But during this whole time, it's called a Warrior Transition Unit, and you sit there basically for 1 weekend a month, just sit there doing nothing. So I decided, I wanted to start self-improvement. So I started reading self-improvement books. I kept hearing this guy's name, Gary Vaynerchuk, hearing his voice. I'm like, I got to know who he is. Looked him up, find out his father has a liquor store 20 minutes from my house.
Oh.
So, sometimes my wife says, I got, my balls are bigger than my brains. So I called up. I said, hey, when's Gary going to be there? He's like, Tuesday. I was like, okay. So I went there and I actually got to meet and have lunch with him and chat with him for a while. And after that is when the whole podcast thing started. The book happened. And that's how the whole comeback coach thing started. And that's what led up to what I'm doing today. So that's my boring story. I hope
All
I
right. No, and yeah, I've got to unpack a lot of that, Rich. So here's my first question for you. Why why were you so angry? Why when you were misbehaving, there's always a root cause for that behavior. Why were you so angry? Why were you such a dick? Why was that who you allowed yourself to be?
Well, for me, like my mother, I don't know if you've ever read a book by Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Mhm.
Well, my mother had a sister, and she was the rich sister, and we
Mhm.
were the poor sister. And I was the black sheep. The other my cousins, which I truly love and adore today, were becoming successful business owners, going to school to be doctors, and here I am, a ninth grade dropout. So I figured, listen, if I'm going to be the black sheep, I'm going to be the blackest sheep.
Sure.
And and when I had my first taste of alcohol that day, like that wasn't the normal. The normal Richard was the guy that was getting beat up, was the guy that was getting picked on. But when I had that first drink, is when I became Rick, and I became the asshole, and it helped me become somebody that I wasn't. You know what I'm trying to say?
Sure. I do. I do. So that's interesting that because what you were doing was you're comparing yourself to somebody that was within your circle, but a little bit outside your circle. When you had that epiphany, whether that was September 11th or when you won Soldier of the Year, when you hit these milestones, even with your injury and coming back from all of that, when did you realize that being that person wasn't who you wanted to be? And then how did you start? Because you're the comeback coach, right? So how did you then make the comeback?
All right, so this is how it broke down. And I want you guys to picture this. I'm sitting on my couch, and the morning. And if you guys don't know, like where I'm sitting right now, if I go sit on my front porch, I can overlook where the Twin Towers once stood.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And we knew people that were in the buildings that day. And so I'm watching this, and as it oh crap, and as it all wow, we're getting too excited here. Let me know. Let me
You're
know.
still good. You're still good.
I'm sober. Okay, guys, I'm sober. So what happened was, this is all unfurling, as everything happened, it was all live. There was no editing,
Right.
and you were hearing bodies crash. You were seeing bodies being pulled out of the Pentagon, and here I am on the right side of the TV is all my shit that I got to turn in because I'm being thrown out again for the second time. And it
Oh.
really hit me that there were people that went to work that day that were not coming home to their kids, and they made the ultimate sacrifice. And that's when I actually broke down literally, and I put that in my book, broke down into my couch, and I cried out to the Lord. I said, Lord, please give me a chance. I want to be there for people that can't be there for themselves. And that's when I think the change really happened. But the big difference was, sometimes we have epiphanies, but if we don't act upon those epiphanies,
Right.
it doesn't mean crap. So,
Well, so how do you help with that though? How do you help when you help facilitate an epiphany with the people who have either read your book or who hire you, who you have coached? How do you help them implement and maintain that momentum from that epiphany? Because you successfully did that, and as you were probably about to say, that's not normal. Like a lot of people have epiphanies and then they're like, meh. But you took it to the next step. How do you help people take it to that next step? And
well,
what did you do for yourself?
well, after I begged my first sergeant, my company commander, to keep me, which I'm still friends with both of them today,
Oh,
which is amazing. After they wanted to throw me out all those times, but I got to drill 2 hours early,
oh,
and I decided my way is not working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start watching and lurking and finding out what the people that are successful are doing, because success leaves clues. Even in my podcasting career, I have people that I'm modeling after. We'll talk about that later. But
mhm.
I decided to get there 2 hours earlier, and I noticed that the people that were the most successful got there 2 hours earlier,
Mm,
stayed 2 hours later,
mhm.
took correspondence courses, and volunteered for everything while everybody else hid. And that's what I did. I just decided to become, again, I wanted to become the ultimate soldier. So I wanted to do, I didn't want to care what the E1s and E4s were doing. I want to know what's the E7 and E8. What are they doing different than I'm not doing? So I just started following like a puppy dog. I'm sure I pissed them off a lot, because here I am following all behind, can I get
Yeah.
your papers? What do you need?
Yeah.
But eventually they started saying, wait a minute, there's something different about him now. Let's let him into the inner circle. And that's how it all started.
When I was in the Navy, they used to say that the Navy stands for never again volunteer yourself. And I took the tack that you took, right? Which was I volunteered for freaking everything because I wanted to take that opportunity to learn as much as I could. And Richard, I don't think people really understand that. And I call it, there's two traits that I just heard there, which was you became humble and then you became curious, right? And I don't believe that you can truly become curious and live your life as a curious person without a level of humility. And you got your butt kicked many, many times. Both you did it to yourself and other people did it to you. Let's talk about that curiosity because of the curiosity of you following around the E7, E8s, all of the different, higher ups, upper management within the military, you learned a lot in order to be successful. How did you translate that into delivering that sort of level of guidance to people who hire you and who want you to help them take their whatever to the next level?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I had to, like you said, I had to take my licks. Like I put out a post this morning in 1986, I was cured of racism, and that's all in my book. But like I said, I had to take a couple of ass kickings. Um, but sometimes I find that, like for me, once I became an NCO or non-commissioned officer,
Mhm.
I believed in an NCO creed. I believed in taking care of my guys. So that's where I started putting people above me, where as of the morning of September 11th, prior to at 9 o'clock in the morning, the whole world owed me a living. You know,
Oh,
after 9:10, I owed the world. So
okay.
I think it changed the whole perspective, and sometimes I just had to figure out, for me, like I said, I only had a ninth grade education, so for me it was a little bit harder because they would talk about certain things in college and sports. I mean, and math, and I'd be like, yeah, I think I was out for that year.
Yeah.
I don't think I was there that year. So I had to. There was a big learning curve that I'm still learning. I'm
Mhm.
still behind, but sometimes just like you said, you just have to be humble and you got to be teachable.
I'm always behind too. And I don't know if it's because of self-esteem issues that I continuously put myself behind, but somebody told me a long time ago, Matt, you never want to be the smartest person in any room that you're in. And I'm never the smartest person in any of the rooms, which I believe gives me so much of an advantage, which you talk about in the book. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the book. So let's talk about Tell us about the book, where people can get the book, and why was that so important for you to write that for your own personal growth and development? And then in turn, what do you want people to glean from the book?
Well, first, the book. You're about we're about the same age.
Mhm.
I was very honored. Everybody, for me, the original Superman was Steve Reeves, and
Yeah.
his opening quote is the opening to my book.
Oh,
I actually got that permission from his wife before she passed. So if you guys love quotes about coming back, definitely check out the quote. It's the opening quote of the book. But the book was about, because I was on a friend of mine's podcast. His name is Donnie Boyven of the Success Champions, and I was telling him my story, and I was, and because during this whole time I was with General Nutrition Center for over 30 years. So I was in the health and fitness industry,
mm,
working with guys from the NFL, Major League Baseball, WWE, NBA. So I was trying to talk about my front story, but he kept going back to my backstory. He said, God, Richie, like there's so many people that are in the health and fitness industry, but there's not many people that have been all the shit that you've been through.
yeah.
He said, so you need to write a book. And I'm like, what do you mean
Mm,
write a book?
mm,
And he's like, a lot of people um, are ashamed of things that happened in their life. And I started to feel the same way. And then I was talking to somebody, I don't remember who it was. I wish I did. They said, I want you to go back and watch the movie 8 Mile with Emmett.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
want you to watch the last 2 minutes and then call me back. So I did. And I'm like, all right, I watched it. I'm like, now, what do you want? He's like, I want you to put a book out there for all the dirty shit you've ever done.
Mhm.
This way, nobody can ever say anything bad about you again. And people can learn from your mistakes. And so that's what I did. I mean, if you read my book, and I tell everybody, it's it sounds like a third grader with autism wrote it, because it's the way I speak.
Mhm.
It was not, everything. I actually had to write it down on yellow paper and put it in the computer. So if it doesn't sound like it has much editing, it doesn't, because I want it to sound like me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that write books. Like my friend Steve Sims wrote a book, and when he first wrote it, his wife, because he had somebody write it for him,
Mhm.
she she looked at it and said, "Steve, you can't put this out." He said,
Oh,
"Why?" Because it's shit.
yeah.
It doesn't sound like you, and people are not going to believe it. So that's when he put out the Bluefish book. But my book it sounds exactly like I am talking right now. It tells my story, but at the end of every chapter is a teaching point.
Mhm.
At the end, the last two chapters are what depression looks like and not what you think it looks like, and what addiction looks like and not what you think it looks like. So it's a very teachable book. It's called A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. It's on Amazon Kindle. It hit #1 twice.
Yay.
And all of my proceeds, 100%, go to help veterans that are struggling with mental health and homelessness. I don't make any money off of it.
Mhm.
But the reason why I put it out there is for that reason. Then I also, we all know that we're all going to die someday. And, I want my daughter to be able to read that book and read it to my grandkids. So like,
Mhm.
this was what Grandpa was about. This is what Daddy was about. This is how he turned his life over, and how he impacted people's lives, and how his legacy is now today.
Where do people start? So it's interesting. Some of the people that we've had on the show have not had that life-changing experience that actually changed them, right? What happened a lot of times is it reaffirmed who they were, but for you, it was this really big transition. When somebody is going through that transition, Rich, where do they begin? What are some of the questions you might ask, or how do you help maintain that momentum with your people so that they see this transition through to the end?
Well, everybody talks about, like, I'm reading a book right now. As you guys know, like I said, I'm only in ninth grade education, but I've read over 5,000 books,
Hmm.
and I got 9 books going at all time. And I'm reading a book about presence, and they
Oh
talk
yeah.
about how, you know, that elevator pitch, how important it is in business and life. My elevator pitch is, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired?
Yeah.
And if you're not sick and tired of being sick and tired, I can't help you.
Yeah.
If you're, if you like wallowing in your own poop, yes, it's warm, it smells, but it's yours.
It's yours.
It's
Yep.
yours. Then
Yep.
then I can't help you. But if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you're like, all right, you know what? The pain of not changing is more than the pain of changing. Then I can help you.
Okay.
And for me, it's just getting down and being real with people. Because like veterans, like we know, like I said, that when we talk, we can be at a diner, meet each other for 5 minutes, and we talk about our deepest, darkest
Yeah,
secrets.
absolutely.
So I think just for me, it's just getting down deep and getting honest with somebody and saying, because you ask somebody, hey, bro, how are you doing? What's the answer is,
Yeah.
I'm
Fine.
doing good.
Yeah.
I'm all right. I'm good. But then, ask second and third level questions. How are you really
Right.
doing? And I think that's what makes me a little bit different, because I actually, like Zig Ziglar says, people don't know how much you care, until they, people don't care how much you know if they know how much you care.
Right.
And if you care about people. For me, people just open up to me. They call me the male Oprah, so I guess that's good for me.
That's a great compliment, dude. That's absolutely awesome. I love there's an organization called It's Okay Not to Be Okay.
Yeah.
And they're really big in mental health and also in veteran circles. And I felt that with you the first time we met. One, that you were um, you came to the conversation without any preconceived notions, no judgment, because not to be mean, but who are you to judge, right? Yeah, and by the way, some of the greatest people that have ever walked this planet have been very specific about not being judgmental. And, when I was on your show, I loved the line of questions that you had. And I loved that you asked this question and then you went to here and then you went to here, and it all gave me a safe space to truly communicate who I am and what I wanted to communicate to your audience. And so let's talk about your podcast. You've done a bunch of podcasts. You are really experienced with it. Why did you even begin doing the podcast, and kind of what is the end game for you when you would say, hey, it was a success or it is a success? What do you have to hit? What are the milestones, or what do you want to be able to do with that show?
Okay. Well, I am the accidental podcaster, by the way. I started the podcast when I was working with GNC. I was running $1 million company, and people would always send me products to try. So
Mm.
I just started doing, product reviews.
Mhm.
Be like, hey, yeah, this product was great. It tasted like ass. This product gave me energy. This product didn't do shit for me.
Mhm.
And then, as on my birthday, 2012, um, I blew out my retina,
Oh,
and so I went 80% blind. And we were talking, as we were just talking about a minute ago. For a while, I was wallowing in my old shit, and I'm feeling sorry for myself. And then, my friends, which I call my amigos, there's like 5 of us. They all said, "Hey, bro, aren't you the comeback coach? Uh, Time for you to come back."
Yeah.
And I couldn't work. I couldn't physically go to work. So I had to start thinking, what can I do to start become relevant again and start uh, helping people. So I started getting down on myself, and then I listened to a podcast, and it was about a guy. He was, and I had him on my show the next week. He was a quadruple amputee, and he's skiing in Aspen with his family. And here I am, sitting on my couch, eating bonbons, getting fat, dumb, and happy.
Mhm.
And I'm like, all right, if this guy could do this, I want to do this. So I invited him to come on the show, and we talked about it, and he gave me some more inspiration. And then
Oh.
he told me, well, I got this friend, and then I got this friend, and then now it just became a whole thing to where now we have like, I think like 380 episodes. Now
Mhm.
I'm a low tech redneck. I want everybody to know I'm a low tech redneck. So I didn't realize that in order for your show to be popular, you need to be on iTunes.
Mhm.
So I had 280 episodes, and it wasn't on iTunes.
Oh.
And they wouldn't let it on iTunes because I had such a big back catalog.
Mhm.
So I had to start a new podcast. And now this one, I think we're like 118 episodes in. So now the new podcast is on Apple. It's everywhere, and it's fun. I've had great people on like yourself, like Eric, John Lee Dumas. I had some of these heavy hitters,
Mhm.
and for me, it's like I said, I'm only a ninth grade dropout, but I'm getting a PhD in business
Yeah.
every day because I can, instead of saying I'm going to pay $1,000 for John Lee's course,
Mhm.
how about I invite John Lee on and ask him whatever the hell I want to ask him?
Well, isn't it amazing how many times they say yes?
Yeah.
We kind of talked about this before because you were going through your client list or not client list, your podcast guest list, and there are big names. You guys, when you subscribe to his podcast, you're going to see. I mean, he's got some unbelievable people, and it was because you had the cojones to ask, right? And not everybody said yes, but enough people said yes, where you were able to start making those connections. Okay.
But now I want to say something, real quick. Um, I always lead with value.
Mhm.
Now, like when I went and talked to John Lee Dumas, he has 1 million listeners a month. He makes $150,000 a month off his podcast.
Wow.
The reason I related to him, he was an ex-tank commander.
Oh.
He lost soldiers in Iraq.
Mhm.
So we actually talked about that on the podcast, which nobody ever talked to him about.
Mhm.
And when I went to him, I said, listen, John, I want to help promote your show to my people. It's about you. I don't care about me. So with me, I always lead with value first. I
Oh.
always, if I just say, hey guys, if I message you one day, say, hey bro, I got one of the top rated podcasts with over 160,000 downloads. You want to be on the show? You'd probably be like, what an asshole. But but if I'd be like, hey, I see your podcast is doing real well. I
Mhm.
would love for you to come on so we can have my audience start listening to your podcast.
Sure.
You would be more willing because you're leading with value,
Mhm.
and the more like Gary Vaynerchuk says, something I believe in. If you promote your friends 10 times more than you promote yourself, you never got to promote yourself.
You never, and they love you for it, and they're going to continue to introduce you to wonderful people, and that's the community that I know that you are so ingrained in. It's, hey, listen, come on my show. If I can add value to your show, I'd love to have the opportunity to do that. And that's the difference. That doesn't happen in television. That doesn't happen with. Sometimes it happens with musicians, but for some reason, this medium is so passionate about the medium that it's unbelievable to people that will say yes to be on your show, because if they know that in your heart that you believe in podcasting and that you want to ask the right questions and have real conversations. I remember I interviewed somebody a little while ago, and he was giving me really crummy answers, right? And I was like, why is he giving me such crummy answers? And this is live, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm asking him really crummy questions. And so I pivoted really hard, like 12 minutes into the show, and he paused and he goes, okay, so now we're where we need to be. And Rich, man, that changed everything for me. Like, I was just like, oh my God, it's like I was phoning it in. I wasn't being as present as I needed to be. And I think that that's one of the gifts that you can give yourself when you podcast, is really truly trying to be in the moment. And with that, because you saw all of the preparation stuff that we do for our shows and all of that, I still always am concerned that I didn't ask the right question. So my last question to you for today is, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Good question. And this is something I even forgot to, and I always do. I always ask the person to, because I always wear a hat. Now it's not because I'm bold, obviously. But if somebody says that I'm not allowed to wear their hat, I will not come on their show whatsoever.
Oh,
And I've actually been offered a top 5 podcast in the world, and I said no because they wanted me in a suit and a tie without the hat. And it's not because, like I said, not because I'm bald. It doesn't matter what hat I'm wearing. What happened was about 6 years ago when I started doing what I was doing, I took my bride out on a dinner date. And guys, if you're married, make sure you date your wife because another man will. Yeah. So just throwing that out there. We went out for dinner and we went to go see the movie American Sniper.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie really, really touched me. And I sat there crying at the end. So as soon as I got home, I got in touch with Chris's wife. And I said, from now on, whenever I go on a show or whenever I go on a podcast or stage, I'm going to wear a hat in honor of Chris. Mm. And it's not just because he was the greatest sniper of all time, but because he gave his life helping another soldier struggling with PTSD. And the reason why I want to bring that up, is that there's people like myself, there's people like you, there's people like Eric that are willing to take the arrows for you until you can get strong enough.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why I bring that up. And thank you for asking that question. And it's always about stepping in the gap and, taking the arrows for somebody until they're strong enough to get up. Because nobody can ever tell somebody to get out of the perfect storm unless they've been in.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes us different. Me, you, Eric, Zach Babcock. That's what makes us different than everybody else. Is we've been there, done that, and threw the T-shirt away.
Yeah. Thrown many of those T-shirts away, my friend. All right. So I'm sure that there are people who are going to want to reach out to you. What is the best way for them to reach out to you, connect with you, consume your stuff? Let's talk about your podcast. Let's talk about your book. Let's talk about your coaching program. Where can they reach out to you?
Oh, well, one thing that Gary Vaynerchuk taught me, he said, I want you to do, because I told him, I said, listen, I'm not walking out of here without a golden nugget. You're going to have to give me something. And he says, I want you to make yourself a hashtag. And I was like, what? Oh. He says, every time you post something, I want you to hashtag the comeback coach. Nice. This way, if anybody wants to find anything that you're doing, all I got to do is go to their toolbar, type in the comeback coach, and it'll come up on everything you've ever done. And it's all free because people love free. And instead of people having to search for you for this way, that way, if they just type in the hashtag the comeback coach or vertical momentum, I'm all over Google. I think I'm over like the first 3 pages of Google with vertical momentum. So they could find me there also.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you very much for everything that you've done, not just for your current clients, but also what you've done for our country. I want to thank you so much for giving so much of yourself to our fellow veterans. They come home. Nobody seems to care after they come home, except for those of us who've been there. So I want to thank you for that. And finally, just as a listener, I want you to consider, if you haven't been through everything that Richard just shared, but you're still wallowing in that crap, and you're so tired of the smell, and you're so tired of lack of change, and you're so tired of all of that stuff, start consuming Rich's stuff. All right. Because hopefully there'll be something in there, which I have found in his stuff for my own personal growth and development, that should just get you to take that first step. And as Richard remembers, coming back from his injuries, coming back from addiction, it's all about that first step. And if you can take that first step, the second step is easier and the third step is easier. And I believe that Richard can be one of those people that can help you take that first step. So Richard, thank you very much for being on the show. We're going to make sure that we have all of your links in our show notes and everything so everybody can contact you. Hashtag the comeback coach. Make sure that you take a look at that through your search engine and on all social media. You'll be able to connect with Richard. And Richard, thank you for everything that you do. And thanks for being a great guest.
Thank you, brother. God bless you. And thank you for your friendship.